guys, Attorney Walter Knott with Disability Resolution PA. I wanted to go ahead and take a moment and basically make a video that's not for the traditional viewer, which is, of course, Social Security benefits, disability insurance, SSI, retirement, etc. I wanted to make a video specifically that will help future generations of attorneys to understand my battle when it came to going and taking the bar exam. Now, a lot of people believe that they would have the capacity to go ahead and take this exam. A lot of people believe that they have the mental strength to go ahead and be competitive against the brightest kids in the nation, right? Whoever's taking that state's bar, whatever state they're from, they're the brightest of the brightest of the best of the best. And so the bottom line is, unless you are incredibly good at taking tests at the doctorate level, or you just kill yourself studying, it's not going to happen. That's just the bottom line. Let me give you some of the metrics that you understand, and then we're going to go into my experience with taking the bar so that future generations can watch this video and understand what I went through, what I saw, and then they can compare that to what they're seeing right now and hopefully take comfort in knowing that the extreme things they go through to make it are shared by other people and worth it. Okay, so with law school, when you enter into a law school, after the end of the first semester, so one semester, a total of 1/3 of the entering class, right? So just a half-year gig, a total of 1/3 of the entering class will be gone. Now, a lot of people know the phrase, when you go to law school, look to your left, look to your right. Those people will not be present at the end of this, which is a horrific, horrifying thing to be like, hey, I'm about to meet all these people and I'm about to make friends with all these people, but now they're all going to be axed. Competitiveness. Extremely high competitive people. Okay, let's continue. By the end of the third semester, so you completed your first year and you did another semester on top of that, another third of that class will be gone. Those are people who still owe student loans. Those are people who were competitive. Okay, and let me put the partiers are the people who decided that this wasn't for them to go ahead and spend that much time per night studying and reading hundreds of pages a night of high level logical analysis that is difficult to read. They're gone in the first semester. It's the difference between the cream of the crop and basically highly intelligent individuals. The highly intelligent individuals are kicked out, and you are just left with the cream of the crop. That is your third. That will then go on, upon completing all the semesters, to take the bar exam. Depending what school you're from, depending on how well the kids in that class are going to be doing, you could see a sweep anywhere from like 35% passage rate on the bar from your class at your school to like 75%, maybe a little higher. What that means is that 1/3 is gone after the first semester, another third is gone after the third semester, and then potentially only a third to maybe half to maybe 2/3 could actually pass the bar. The rest fail the bar, and then they have to go ahead and try and take it again farther down the line. We had an employee that I think took the bar at the law firm 4 or 5 times, finally passed it. It is an extremely difficult test. It is not meant for people with average intelligence. It is not meant for people with higher level intelligence. It's meant for the cream of the crop. I always think it's interesting when, people show me an attorney doing something on YouTube and they're like, oh, that person's an idiot for doing that. Oh, or they misspoke. They're an idiot. The truth of the matter is almost all attorneys are in some form having particularly problematic PTSD. We constantly have clients on the phone that are crying with us, screaming at us to go ahead and make magic happen, etc. And to some degree, that limits our ability to go ahead and get really beautiful sleep. To make magic happen all the time is extremely difficult. And the bottom line is that we're often very tired and worn out. I, of course, am one of them. With my age and consideration, I should not be having all this white hair. But I live probably on the knife's edge of what is considered the allowable amount of stress that a human can take per day, before there is a negative effect, without knowing certain controlling aspects of how to calm the mind, etc. And what's important to think here is this. When I had to go take the bar exam, up until, I think it was 4 days before the bar exam, I had been taking sleeping pills. I don't take any pills normally. Maybe a chewy vitamin here and there, but I don't take pain medication. I don't take any medication at all, in the sense of, my body. I had, obviously medications and things like that for my hand, which I'll cover in another video. I'm a registered ADA, but it's not, But the bottom line is this. When I went to go take the bar exam, 4 days before the bar exam, I was up to 4 sleeping pills per night just to be able to get myself to actually fall asleep and wake up. At that point, I was having extreme headaches, and 4 days before the bar exam, I cut it off. Cut the medication off. I was awake for around 2 days straight, which left me basically to travel, begin the travel process, finalize the packing details, where I'm going to be going to the hotel to go take the bar exam. A lot of my friends in law school all utilized study medication, whether they were prescribed it or not. And the study medication would help them go ahead and focus and learn things at an accelerated rate. It was a sometimes legal and most of the time illegal form of use and abuse of drugs to go ahead and allow them to process things at a higher level. That's fine. It is what it is. I'm not passing judgment. This video is not about passing judgment. This video is about understanding what people do to make it happen. And I remember when I cut off the medication for the sleeping pills, I was really dragging my butt all over the place. I couldn't function properly. Even going to the bathroom was difficult. My memory was going through this weird warp. I was thinking I was not going to be able to take the exam. And then, almost magically, around the day before, I was able to kind of come back to my senses. And I'm not sure if I was in a hyper-adrenaline state, but the drive from Orlando to Tampa. I hate going to Tampa. It's not that I don't like Tampa. I hate going to Tampa because the drive to Tampa reminds me of the moments before the rest of my life would be decided. So, I'm driving there in my blue Prius, which you guys all know from the videos. And I get there. Now, normally, I don't have a lot of extra cash to go ahead and spend on this or that or whatever, but I was in a fancy hotel this time because the hotel was right next to where I had to take the bar exam. And when you go take the bar exam, you want to be right next to where you're going to be taking the bar exam, in the convention center. So I was in this fancy hotel, and I'll never forget, being really, really, really up high, seeing these storm clouds come in, and the hotel was so high up. There's so many levels to this hotel that I was in the storm clouds. I could see the lightning coming down. I could see the storm clouds creating a storm and making a storm and rain and all this stuff. It was just an incredible experience to see this. I remember the person delivering food, because when you go and take the bar exam, you traditionally don't go out to eat and have fun and have a beer and blah 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 the night before. You don't do that. You order food directly to your room and you sit there and you study. Now, I had note cards that were about this wide that I had memorized from all the different fields of law that we needed to. And when you guys think of note cards, you think of okay, this means this. They weren't like that. They were okay, here's the 15 elements I need to know for this particular thing. Flip, there's the elements, all 15 of them. They were highly summarized, details with lots of information per note card. But at that level, that's what you have to deal with. So I remember being there. I remember talking with somebody who I was dating. No, I wasn't dating her at that time anymore. She ended up with some other guy. And the bottom line was, I think she called me to see how I was doing, see what was going on. And well, I guess this needs to be pulled closer, but and kind of the bottom line was, I don't remember a lot about the conversation. I do remember her telling me specifically about that she was on the floor or whatever, that was like the concierge floor or the whatever floor where they had like made food or something, and as a result of that they got all these little free things for being on that floor. I remember that. I didn't know any of that stuff because I'm like, when I go someplace to do something, like I will literally stay in a motel before I'll stay in a hotel because of the price difference and stuff like that. Sometimes you can get a hotel super cheap because there's so many rooms and they need to get people into them, but usually I'm totally fine with a motel. Like, it's not a big deal to me. I grew up on a farm, so but I remember that phone call, and then I studied, and I remember ordering food, and the food that I ordered was purposeful to not give me a stomach ache, not keep me up, no extra sugar, no extra this or that. I remember I drank water, no soda, none of that jazz. And I remember I went to the bathroom. I didn't flush the toilet because I forgot to. That's how focused my brain was on just memorizing and retaining analytical information. And then I woke up and went to go flush the toilet because my brain just, didn't work. And I woke up in the middle of the night and went and, did that. And then you wake up with that alarm, and you never forget that moment when you wake up to go take the bar exam. You get in the elevator, and there's kids from every corner of the U.S., every law school in Florida, talking about this. Well, do you think this will be on it? The big thing for that year was there going to be Native American law integrated into, and it was, but it was actually a fake question, because they'll have like fake questions in it that nobody knew the answer to about Native American law. And the interesting thing about it was that I was hearing all of this information in the elevator that was wrong. And I had already previously memorized it, so I knew exactly what it was bullet point by bullet point. And the crazy thing about it was I remember thinking to myself, is this person that's telling me this information smart enough to know specifically that what they are feeding me is either untruthful to get me to get a lower score, or truthful and that they just don't know what the law is? And I was doing that balancing test. And when I walked out of that elevator, I immediately ignored whatever they told me and continued to walk out of that hotel, big, huge lobby, to the convention center. Lots of steps to get into the front door. And then you get there, and they assign to you your room. There are disabled rooms. There are rooms for, the general masses where it's just lines and lines and lines of chairs. Imagine one of the largest rooms you've ever seen and just lines of chairs all the way up and down. It's almost like a horror movie. I was in a disability room, which was still a very large room with a lot of people in it. I had the things that I had to use. I remember, and it's a 2-day exam. And I had problems with the first day, which I was thinking, how the hell am I going to get to day 2? Because when you go take the bar exam, back then you had the option of writing it out or typing it out. And I can't write for extended periods. You often see me writing with a fountain pen, like this stuff or this stuff or whatever. Fountain pen is one of these deals, if you're not sure. Because it's easier for me to write because they flex. Because my right hand is crushed as a child. So the point is that I had a problem on the first day. My hand started to bleed profusely because I was typing as much as I could. I remember I got to the point at the end of the first day where my right ear was ringing, and I kept trying to think to myself, I kept trying to be like, I hope the spheres of my brain can process the information correctly. I hope I can do this. I hope I can do this. Because you start to question yourself when you're sitting there. What did I memorize? What was the truth? What was the actual thing? How does it work? What was I missing? There was a flip in this claim somehow. What was it? And you start to go through all these little things that decipher how you saw the case coming out. I had problems on the first day. I had a lot of problems with my hand, and you're not supposed to put the medication pads directly on areas that are open and bleeding, but I did it. I did it to numb the whole area, but it didn't stop the bleeding. You get done with day one, and there were people that went to the bar that night and got wasted. And they either didn't take day two or they just took it and, did whatever they did. Here's the funny thing. You go back to the room, same gig. You don't do anything. Or at least I didn't do anything. You go back to the room, you don't do anything. I got a couple of calls from the person I think I used to date back in the day, and I got a call from her. I got a call from a buddy. What did you think of this question? What did you think of that question? I got a call from one of the top ranked students in the school, who consistently from year 1, year 2, year 3 was the top student. Hyper genius. I mean, could do things that are not within the capacity of most individuals. The normative standard of humans being able to think at that level. And so you go back to your room. First thing you do is you go ahead and you sit down on the bed and you look at the window. You don't appreciate what just happened, but you know you're supposed to be happy. And your emotions are confused at that point. You're not sure what to do with yourself. But you know you have to study, and you know you have to sleep. And those are crucial. So at that point, you're thinking, I'll set my alarm later. But you're smart. You're smartest you're ever going to be because you're that in tune with everything that's going on at a very high level. And what you do is you go ahead and set your alarm for the next day right there. It's the first thing you do. That way you know you're going to wake up. And I remember back in the day, I had like an iPhone, I had like an iPad, and I set them both. I knew I was going to wake up. And I called the desk, and I was like, hey, make sure you wake me up. Make sure you call me. I remember that. The morning arrives, day 2. My hand was swollen. It looked like a chubby hand. My middle finger, which is the one it doesn't look right. It's never going to look right. I mean, they could do more surgery on it, but you get to a point where it's just like, unless they have like some breakthrough in medicine, they're just not going to be able to make it right, which is fine. It is what it is. So at that point, I remember it. Before my alarms went off, I got the call. The first thing my brain thought was, answer the call, why did my alarms go off? Sitting beside me it was to my right. There were 2 beds, I was in the left one, the window was here. Sitting beside me was the food plates that I had, because I wasn't really sure what to do with them. I was thinking about just putting them outside the door, but I wasn't sure if that was like faux pas or whatever. So they were there. And that's Sweetie drinking because she's adorable, but she's a slurper. And day 2 comes quickly. You go back to your room. You know the proctor at that point. I had a proctor that was making a little bit too much noise. I don't know what the deal with that is, but sometimes we get a proctor that's sitting back there and tearing off pages of a magazine, stuff like that, or getting phone calls to their phone. And it wasn't just like, it was buzzing. It was like full-on ringing. But anyways, neither here nor there. That day, I struggled significantly with physical limitations. My back was hurting, my butt was hurting, my legs were hurting, my feet kept coming numb. My hand was really messed up and bleeding. It got to the point where I couldn't wipe the blood anymore because it was too distracting. It was too much of a problem. So ultimately, I just put a restrictive glove on, and I just let it bleed into the glove. And then finally got to the point where the glove was, if you ever have a glove and there's like water in the glove and the fingertips, that's what it was like. It was like warm water, and is what it is. So I went to the bathroom, I cleaned it, and I came back, and here we go. Got it done. Remember, these are full days. 2 full days of examination. You walk out. Your brain is fatigued. I imagine that moment when I walked out is similar to the first time a cocaine, crack, whatever user would feel as they're high. I imagine that moment of euphoria of all that stress somewhat lifting off your shoulders begins to feel like that unrealistic euphoria of the moment. You go back to your hotel room. No, at that point I had checked out. That's right. When I left and I was done. No more hotel room, had to go to the car. There were so many people that I knew outside. I didn't want to talk to any of them. I felt almost like an abuse victim. I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And of course people came up to me and they're like, hey, what'd you think? What'd you think about this one? What'd you think about that one? What'd you think about the essay question? Blah, 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 you know. And I was like, yeah, cool. And they're like, hey, we're going here. I was like, oh man, I gotta go do something. And I don't remember what it was, but I left and I drove not far. I got out of the area, the crime scene. Ugh, that exam was murder. And I stopped at a, what is it called? They have like cheap clothing. I buy skinny ties there sometimes. Burlington Coat Factory. I stopped at the Burlington Coat Factory and went in to look at their ties. I just wandered around. Then I came out of the Burlington Coat Factory and I got in the car and I called my family. Let them know it was done. I had an emotional throw-up digestion area after this whole thing where I just wasn't able to fully comprehend what had happened. It's a jarring experience. A lot of people are like, I could do it. When people tell me, I'm just as smart as you, and some people are just as smart as me or far beyond my intelligence. I've met some of those too, especially in the space industry area that I'm in. I'm over in the Brevard area where I live, and oh my goodness, absolutely incredible intelligence. There is no law student taking the bar exam for the first time who does not experience nightmares thereafter. You will experience nightmares. You will wake up and it will be you trying to study and realizing that you haven't learned enough and you're going to take the exam. It will be you trying to basically get to the bar building, to actually take at the convention building, and you're not able to get there. You're not able to get into the building. They've locked you out or you can't do something. You have those dreams for the next 3 to 4 years after you take the bar exam. They become more spread out as time goes on. It's just how it all goes. Even when President Nixon was stepping down, he quoted the bar exam in that speech because it's that traumatic of an event. I have a Jewish mom, and in that particular lineage, if you don't pass it, you do to some degree become a leper, which is, and I use that term lightly and heavily at the same time because of essentially what happens mentally. You're aware of that. You don't want to be in the didn't pass crowd. So then you wait for a month. I remember giving my mom and dad the login details. I knew my dad wasn't going to look it up. He's an attorney as well. He did aviation litigation. The plane goes down, he would represent the plane. And then he became a super high-end attorney in New York City who represented major corporations for a lot of stuff. But his main specialty was aviation law. So I knew he wasn't going to look it up because that just wasn't. I knew he would put that on my mom to look up because my mom is always like tech savvy, get into the computer, look at it. So for some reason they had. So the day it was coming out, I woke up super late. I don't know what happened. I woke up like 11. My body was just, and I went to the computer, and I didn't know this, but my parents had already looked up to see what my scores were. They already knew. I didn't know. They weren't at the house, right? Because they were visiting me throughout this, where's my bar score thing. And basically at that point, they went somewhere else. I think they were at a store or something. I forget what it was. But they'd already looked at the score. They already knew what it was. I looked up the score. And I will never forget it for the day of my life. It was just, you guys don't know how it works. The way it works is there's 3 scores. There's pass, fail, pass, fail, pass, fail. You can pass one day and fail another day. You can fail one day and pass another day, right? Because there's 2 days of examination, and still pass. You can. Or you can fail. You can fail one day's worth of exam, but still pass the overall exam. The person, a couple of them, above my name had failed. But then when I found my number, it was a triple pass. Triple pass. It was a pass, pass, pass. And I remember going for a walk, and I went for a walk, and it was at Spring Isle. God, I hated that place with the whole HOA situation. Horrible, horrible HOA. I hope they've cleaned up their act, but they were illegal in some of the things that they did to me, how they treated me. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, that's, if you want to live in an HOA, that's totally up to you. So the point is this, and that's the other thing too. These HOAs, they change the personnel that they have. The HOA that was in when I had the biggest problems, they had to kick their president off the board because he violated things that were in its own, manual. But that's neither here nor there. So the point is this: I go for a walk there, and I call my parents, and they're like, "So what's your score?" Even though they already knew what it was. And I let them know. I'm like, congratulations. And I was like, did you guys know? Did you look up? They're like, yeah, we did. I was like, oh, wow, 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 wow. You never forget these moments. I assume that I will be 50, 60, 70, and I will still remember these moments. I assume these moments will be, I don't want to say, pushed, charred, welded into my brain, but you never forget it. I think one of the very important things to remember at the end of the day with taking the bar exam is that you fight so hard to become attorney, blah, 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 blah. Lawyer, blah, 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 blah. Counselor, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. You fight so hard to get that title. And then about 7 or 8 years into having it, some people it takes 10 years, some people it takes 5 years, you begin to realize that you don't want to die with that title, in the sense of always working as an attorney in the field with the stress, etc. And I think what's important about that is that I've kind of reached that point where I would be okay with doing another job. I would be okay with doing another job. Space Constitution, writing constitutions for future, corporations, states, people, creating nations in space, creating templates for them to use as future constitutions, creating the best constitutions that have ever been created. Although that is obviously legal in law. But I feel like to some degree that's obviously more withdrawn from the constant daily pounding of having to make magic happen. It takes 7 or 8 years into it, but you do realize the extreme costs you pay, not just in student loans, which are out of control and should be illegal, but at how they applied them to certain people. But the realization that you have is that you lose that chunk of time in your life. In the early years of you starting to become an attorney, the years that you're taking, or the year that you're taking, well, it could be years that you're taking the bar exam, the years after you become an attorney, when you're at the lowest level earning your ways, then you get to the medium where people respect you, you've got stripes, and then you crawl up to the higher levels and the executive and the I think what's really important to remember about taking the bar exam is that it's like those moments in those great films where somebody's got to fight somebody in like some karate dojo, taekwondo, whatever movie, The Karate Kid or whatever, you know what I mean? Don't try to focus on what's happening around you. Focus solely on what you know and how to effectively argue that. Other people want to talk to you. Other people want you to make them feel good. What'd you think of that question? What'd you put down? Did you put down this? I put down this. Other people want you to make them feel better. Your job is not to make other people feel better when it comes to the bar exam. Your job is to survive and pass the bar exam. And there's Sweetie. She's going to be coming over soon. She always does that, and then she'll be bitching and whining at me and growling. So, and it's just about food. It's just a chubby piggy dog. So what I would say to anybody in the future generations that are watching this, study very hard, because the outcome of this truly does change your life in the positive of passing it and negative of not passing it. You have to be okay with realizing that the unfathomable investment you have made into being in law school, working harder than all the other people that are there to be able to stay there, and then being smarter than everybody else, being the cream of the crop to be able to pass through all these semesters without being kicked out, going below the C-, grade level. It is important to realize that that is a small investment compared to the amount of work that you will have to go ahead and do once you leave the comfortable zone of being a law student, which is not something you want to hear. There are varying degrees. There are people who work at nonprofits. There are people who work for like the county bar or the this or the that. And those aren't super stressful jobs. They're not meant to be super stressful, and they're not super stressful jobs. Then you have people that are practicing to, pay for, higher standards of life, or they're in a field that doesn't pay much, like disability law. I think what is crucial that I would like to say to myself from my experience, to go back in time to that person, is to just save more money. A lot of the stuff that I have, I didn't spend tons of money on. I've never bought an expensive suit in a store. I've never done that. I will buy an expensive suit on eBay and then I'll fit it to myself. But the point is, when I bought my house, it was incredibly bad timing. And it was incredibly bad timing because literally months after that, COVID hit. And then the whole thing was, because the law firm should be making double what it was making in 2019 right now. And what it made in 2019 was awesome. 2020, not good. 2021, horrible. And that's just because we're having to switch into telephonic hearings, and we're not going to offices like we used to, where we used to have lots and lots and lots of clients meeting us at these different office locations. And the thing is, I can't get sick, right? So I have to limit how many offices I'm going to, because I have to really restrict, is there a potential that I'm going to get COVID? What safety measures am I going to take to keep things cleanly, etc.? And when I go to the homeless offices to meet with the homeless, like I do, I've now started to go to more, I have a bunch of procedures that I use to keep everything clean, whether it's the paper that's in one location versus another location, or the clothing that I'm wearing, etc. So, I guess my point to you is this: save a little bit more. You're going to make a big investment at some point, which is your house. There's no way around the fact that once you buy that house, you're either going to be in a, what the hell did I just do environment, or everything's fine, or everything's great and I'm paying off the mortgage even faster. I had the great, terrible fortune of having essentially COVID hit directly after purchasing it. But of all the law firms that are similar to mine, doing disability law, I think the only one. I don't know all of them, but I think I'm the only one that didn't take out an SBA loan, because they wouldn't give it to me, because they said that I had child support that needed to be paid, even though I don't have a kid and have never adopted anybody. But aside from that, I made it through. I made it through the dark time. 2022, we're really going to start doing this again, which I'm excited about. Because, the goals are very simple. The goals are to pay off the house, maybe instead of having to rent office locations, to buy an office location. But see, then the problem is you still have to rent office locations, because in order to work with the homeless like I do, I go to all these different geographic locations to meet with them in bad areas. So the point is, when you go take this bar exam, do the best you can. And then after that, there's no more. If you're out drinking and having fun, that's like the extreme of it's not going to happen. If you are essentially a person that worked really, really hard, you stayed to yourself, you built up your strengths, you became the most knowledgeable person that you can through the academia program that you were presented with, you've got a good shot. Nobody goes into the bar exam knowing that they're going to pass it. Even the people that go in just, for bar exam companies where they like teach you how to like study for the bar exam, even those people that like go and take different tests in different states, they don't go into it knowing that they're going to pass it. They don't get perfect scores. Nobody cares if you get a perfect score. They just don't. Like, you'll learn your score. I don't remember what my score was. I don't even know what the metrics are for how many points were in each thing. But the bottom line is, you will remember the triple crown, whether it's a pass, fail, pass, a fail, pass, pass, or a potential fail, a fail, 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 or a pass, pass, pass. You'll remember what you got with that. But pretty much after 3 years or 4 years, you won't remember the scores, you won't remember the details. In fact, I just found some of the regalia stuff that I used for my graduation from law school in a closet that I was working on organizing the other day. So law school becomes a thing of the past. Who knows? One day I might not be in law. I would be totally fine with that. And I always tell people my goal in life is to essentially become a beach bum. That's it. My goal in life is to become a beach bum. I've added a lot to society. I've helped a lot of people. But at some point, I'll reach a point where I'm going to have to actually go on a vacation and see beautiful things and have a real relationship with somebody that I can have time to spend with instead of having a very effed up personal life. That's the reality. When you're never around, it never works. So I wanted to be very honest in this video because I feel like with a lot of these types of videos, there are always these people saying, as I repeated and as I've stated and as I'd like to explain to you, and I will proffer this information to you, and all of that crap that you don't learn anything from other than bullet points. It's a bullet point on a piece of paper. You don't really get the context of the emotional angst that you go through with this kind of stuff. But I hope you learned something. I know this video is way longer than I intended it to be. I'm sorry about that. But anyways, have an absolutely wonderful day. Attorney Walter Knott. If you ever have any questions, you can always shoot me an email about things that you might be experiencing when trying to go take the bar exam. I don't know if I'll be able to help you in any way, but hey, have an absolutely wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.